What's up, everyone, and welcome to episode 25 of the Bronx and Big Blue Breakdown. I'm your host, Brady Heslin, and today we're going to be breaking down some news between the Giants and the Yankees. There wasn't a ton of news this week compared to last week, but still a good amount of stuff to talk about. And the first thing I want to talk about is the Giants hiring defensive coordinator Dennard Wilson. So that came out on Sunday that the Giants were going with Dennard Wilson as the defensive coordinator. There were also guys like Jim Leonard appeared to be in the running as well, but ultimately they went with Dennard Wilson. And before I say anything, I just want to say this: I may not fully agree with all of these decisions. Like me personally, I probably would have leaned Jim Leonard, but not by a ton. But here's the thing: I trust John Harbaugh. All right, this guy has built great staffs the past 18 years in Baltimore, and I fully trust him with everything that he is doing here with the Giants. And we'll look back in a couple years and see if this was the right decision or not. But let's break down Dennard Wilson. So, kind of go through his resume a little bit. So he's been the Titans defensive coordinator the past two seasons. He was the Ravens defensive back coach in 2023. He was the Eagles defensive backs coach slash pass game coordinator from 2021 to 2022. He was the Jets defensive backs coach slash passing game coordinator 2017 to 2020. Rams defensive backs coach 15 and 16. Rams quality control coach 12 to 14. And Bears pro scout from 2009 to 2011. A lot of people might be thinking, oh, great, another Titans defensive coordinator. This guy's different. All right, this guy is a lot different than Shane Bowen. He's not just going to be running these, vanilla defenses and just trusting all 11 of his guys to execute. He's going to disguise more. He's going to blitz a little bit more. If we look at his numbers, so last year the Titans were 28th in points per game, 21st in yards, 28th in EPA per play, 23rd in passing yards per game, 30th in passing yards per attempt, 15th in rushing yards per game, and 15th in rushing per attempt. 2024, they were 30th in points per game, but they were second in yards, 25th in EPA per play, second in yards per game passing, 9th in passing yards per attempt, rushing, 26th in yards per game, and 18th in yards per attempt. So obviously those numbers don't jump off the page at you. But the Titans really lack talent on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, they have Jeffrey Simmons, but that's really about it. Their best edge rusher this year statistically was Jihad Ward. And a lot of Giants fans probably remember him from his days with Wink Martindale. So not good at all. They really were not good on the back end. The Jarius Sneed is their best corner, and he was hurt majority of the last two seasons. They traded Roger McCreary. So they're really, really lacking talent on defense. And a lot of Titans fans, actually have had positive things to say about Dennard Wilson. So that's a really encouraging sign for me. But yeah, younger guy, obviously worked with John Harbaugh, has, experience as a defensive coordinator, but he's different than Shane Bowen. And, I'm confident in his ability to teach. I think that's really important with coaches, and John Harbaugh really stressed that during his introductory press conference. Is teach, teach, teach. With coaches. I like his defensive coach background. I mean, he was a defensive backs coach for the Rams, Jets, Eagles, and Ravens. So he learned under like Todd Bowles with the Jets. Obviously, John Harbaugh with the Ravens and that kind of thing. Mike Macdonald that's what I was trying to think of. Mike Macdonald was the defensive coordinator that he worked under with the Ravens. And, when he was the defensive backs coach, all those teams had really good, passing defenses. So, and we've seen him have some success, with the Titans. I mean, they were second in passing yards per game in 2024. And, they were 15th in rushing yards per game, so above average last year. In the running game. So he's had success. Or, I mean, you can't say, for the Titans' talent level, I would say that's a success, and that kind of thing. So one thing I do expect the Giants to do is I think they're going to bring in some veterans that know how to run his style of defense, because his style of defense puts a lot on the plate for the defensive backs. And I think that's coming from his defensive backs coach background. So I think Paulson Adebo fits pretty well. Cordell Flott, I'm not sure. Deontay Banks, not sure. Tyler Nubin, I don't know. I think a guy like Caleb Downs is really enticing under John Harbaugh and Dennard Wilson. I wouldn't be surprised if they bring in like a Marlon Humphrey. I know that's not like great, but I mean he's a veteran that knows how to run his style of defense. I would 100% expect them to bring in at least one experienced linebacker, because McFadden's a free agent and we'll see if Okereke is back next year. But I think they might take a little bit of kind of the Commanders' approach, or even what the Giants did a little bit in 2022, where they brought in those veterans. I think they're going to bring in veterans that know how to run his defense, and then they're going to draft young guys at those positions to try to groom them up for the future. So I like the hire. I really do. A lot different feeling than Shane Bowen. I mean, Shane Bowen was like the Giants' fourth choice. Dennard Wilson was at the top of a lot of people's lists in 2024 when the Giants were looking for a defensive coordinator for that season. But all in all, I'm excited for it. We'll see what he can do. He's never had a guy like an Abdul Carter or really a Brian Burns. He's really had those star edge rushers. So it'll be interesting to see what he does with them. Obviously, Dexter Lawrence, I think he's a step up than Jeffrey Simmons, but he's got to, really lock in this year and play better. So, there's pieces for sure for him to work with on this defense. I mean, it's certainly more talented than the Titans defense was, but there's still a lot of work to do. I mean, linebacker's a big question, corner's a big question, and then obviously, the run game just as a whole. So, excited to see him in action this upcoming season, and especially in like training camp and that kind of thing. The next coach that the Giants hired, well, this is before Dennard Wilson, but I think Dennard Wilson's a little more important, but is Chris Horton. So the Giants hired Chris Horton to be their special teams coordinator. He was the Ravens special teams coordinator before that. Originally, it looked like the Ravens were going to block him from going to another team, but after they hired Jesse Minter, they'll let him explore other opportunities. And now he is with the Giants. So, fun fact, he was actually with the Giants, I think it was 2012 during that offseason, and in a training camp and preseason, but he got caught before the season. So interesting fact there. But he's 41 years old, so he's spent the last 6 seasons, so from 2019 on, as the Ravens special teams coordinator. Before that, from 2014 to 2018, he was the Ravens assistant special teams coach. So this is a Harbaugh guy through and through. Obviously, Harbaugh has a special teams background, and to have this guy working in special teams with Harbaugh for the last 11 seasons, I mean, that says a lot about what Harbaugh thinks of Chris Horton. He's only 41, so, I mean, he was 30, working with Harbaugh in the special teams. So it's tough to really evaluate special teams. I mean, obviously, they had Justin Tucker for a while, who's one of the best kickers of all time. But Bobby Skinner posted that they've had 1 punt return touchdown and 2 kick return touchdowns in those 6 seasons, so that's not great numbers. But again, it's tough to really say, and you can't, really field goal blocks and punt blocks aren't recorded, which is kind of stupid, but they're not recorded, so we don't really know that. But kind of just a wait and see thing. Again, trust John Harbaugh. This guy that has worked with John Harbaugh for over a decade, and he's also bringing over the assistant head coach title. So, who knows? Maybe if the Giants have a really good special teams unit, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets some head coaching looks potentially in the next upcoming years. Kind of similar to like how Joe Judge did with the Giants, and he's like a long shot somewhere and he gets a head coaching job. But not a ton to really break down on the special teams front. But just glad to have him follow John Harbaugh, and glad that the Ravens allowed that. So I'm trying to find one more guy here. His resume. I'm not sure if it's on here, so I'm just going to look it up. But the last thing I want to talk about is Willie Taggart. So this guy is joining the Giants staff, but it's unclear in what role. I would expect it to be the running backs coach, but he did interview for the offensive coordinator job. with the Giants. So I have it pulled up now. Um, so this guy is, one of the most qualified. I wouldn't even say just running backs, but probably one of the most qualified position coaches in the league. I mean, this guy is basically the third Harbaugh son. So let me run through it. So 1999, he was the Western Kentucky wide receivers coach. 2000, he was the Western Kentucky quarterbacks coach. 2001 to 2002, he was the co-offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach at Western Kentucky. 2003 to 2006, he was the assistant head coach and quarterbacks coach at Western Kentucky. 2007 to 2009, he was the Stanford running backs coach. 2010 to 2012, he was Western Kentucky's head coach. 2013 to 2016, he was South Florida's head coach. 2017, he was Oregon's head coach. 2018 to 2019, he was Florida State's head coach. 2020 to 2022, he was Florida Atlantic's head coach. 2023 2024, he was the Ravens running backs coach. Last year, he was the assistant head coach and the running backs coach. So it's likely he'll be joining the Giants as the running backs coach. I mean, this guy has legit head coaching experience at top level colleges. I mean, Oregon and Florida State. Um, and there were things that come out. He's a really hard nosed coach, right? Um, Cam Scadaboo, Tyron Tracy, those guys were really working hard during training camp. There were things that came out at Oregon that it was almost like a military training camp almost in college. He didn't have a ton of success in his career in the NCAA. He was 71 and 82, but still, I mean, it says a lot about the guy. So obviously, he coached with John Harbaugh, but he also played for and coached with Jack Harbaugh. So that is pretty interesting there. Let me try to find the exact years that they were together. So yeah, so he played quarterback for Jack Harbaugh at Western Kentucky and coached under, sorry, he played for Jack Harbaugh and he coached under Jim and John. So yeah, so he served under Jim at Stanford and then John in Baltimore. Um, Taggart has described his relationship with the family as being like a son to Jack, and Jack has referred to him as an outstanding coach and recruiter. So following his time in Baltimore, Taggart is transitioning to the Giants to aid John Harbaugh in establishing his program in New York, bringing extensive experience to the staff. So I actually think this is a really big hire. This is a guy that's kind of flown under the radar, um, throughout this cycle. But I think this guy could really, have some success. And I mean, look at guys. I mean, Justice Hill, Keaton Mitchell. I mean, obviously they've had Derrick Henry, but those are guys that have kind of broken out a little bit under Willie Taggart, especially in the receiving game. So I think this could be big for Tyron Tracy, and again, big for Cam Scadaboo. So I'm really excited about this hire as the running backs coach, and he gets to work with two talented young running backs. So the last thing I'll talk about with the Giants coaching staff in this one is they are keeping two position coaches from the past coaching staffs. They're keeping Charlie Bolin as the outside linebackers coach and Tim Kelly as the tight ends coach. So both interim coordinators are staying with the Giants. I'm glad about Charlie Bolin. I was, fairly impressed with what he was able to do as the interim defensive coordinator. I think he did a better job than Shane Bowen, especially in the Patriots game. That game didn't look good on paper, but he really tried just throwing everything at Drake May. He didn't just, do the Shane Bowen, play, vanilla defense and trust your guys to, execute better than their guys. He actually tried giving the Giants a schematic advantage, which is something that Shane Bowen really never did. So I was impressed with that. He was a younger guy. Obviously, he helped Brian Burns have his breakout season. Abdul Carter did better when Bowen became the interim defensive coordinator. Kayvon Thibodeau was looking better even early on in the year. So glad to keep him around. I think he could be a defensive coordinator candidate in the coming years. He had an interview with the Cowboys, but if the Giants edge rushers continue doing what they're doing, I think he definitely could get some defensive coordinator looks. And then Tim Kelly, kind of tough to say with the tight ends. He was a guy with offensive coordinator experience in the past. I didn't really love how Theo Johnson or Daniel Bellinger looked this year, but I'm not really, leaning one way or the other. It's not like he called plays or anything, this year. So, I'm fine with that. The big thing though is that Carmen Brasillo likely will be gone. Um, I would have liked to seen him around, stick around, but again, this is John Harbaugh's show, and the offensive line coach is probably the most important position coach of all the position coaches. Your offensive line coach has to be on the same page as your offensive coordinator. So Todd Monken, he's likely to be the Giants' offensive coordinator unless he gets the Browns head coaching job, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But if Todd Monken wants to bring his own offensive line coach from Baltimore, even if Baltimore, maybe was even at the similar level to the Giants or maybe even a little bit worse, it depends on what metric you look at or whatever. I would rather him have his own guy than Brasillo and Monken are butting heads. I mean, look at Mark Colombo and Joe Judge. Colombo didn't even make it out of training camp because those guys couldn't get on the same page. I mean, Colombo was like a lunatic, but still. So I think Carmen Brasillo might end up in Tennessee, maybe with Brian Dable. We'll see. This likely also means Greg Van Roten's probably gone because he's pretty much followed Brasillo all around. Lou Moore did a similar thing, so we'll see about him. But yeah, so I mean, maybe Brasillo. It said he's likely not to be retained. It's not like he's not retained. And again, we don't really know. Maybe John Harbaugh offered for him to stay, but he didn't want to. I don't really know. But Carmen Brasillo, thank you for your services. 2025 Bronx and Big Blue Breakdown Giants Coach of the Year. That will never be forgotten. And I think Willie Taggart is a dark horse going into 2026. I guess the actual last thing I'll talk about is, the Browns situation and then Brian Dable. So the Browns still have not named a head coach. It looks like it's either going to be Nate Scheelhaus. I'm butchered that name in the head coaching candidates preview. I'm sorry, it's Nate Scheelhaus or Jim Schwartz. If I'm a Browns fan, I am pounding the table for Nate Scheelhaus. I mean, Jim Schwartz just would not be an inspiring hire. I think he's a great defensive coordinator, but take a shot at a young guy. I mean, what do you have to lose? Like, honestly. Maybe you stumble into the next Sean McVay, but that's besides the point. So Todd Monken's name has been thrown around kind of as a dark horse candidate. So, we'll see with that. But if he's not the Browns head coach, I'd be shocked if he doesn't join the Giants as the offensive coordinator. I was kind of waiting till today to record this because I wanted to see if they hired him, but he has not been hired just yet. So, we'll see about that. And then Brian Dable was hired today as the Titans offensive coordinator. I think that's a good spot for him. Gets to work with Cam Ward, a guy that the Giants really liked last year in the draft. Him and Robert Saleh apparently have a good connection there. So, yeah, we'll see. I think Brian Dable is going to be a great offensive coordinator, and I think he will get another head coaching opportunity. I think he would have been better in Buffalo than Joe Brady, but that's not besides the point. So I think that's all I got for the Giants for this breakdown part of the podcast. Now we'll move on to the Yankees. Not really much this week. I did the Cody Bellinger video. Literally, I kid you not, I'm literally uploading last week's episode and the news breaks. Cody Bellinger re-signs with the Yankees. So I did a quick episode with a quick video with my sister breaking that down. So go check that out if you've not seen that yet. The big thing I'm worried about with that is is that all the Yankees are going to do this offseason? Because just running it back with the exact same team as last year is just crazy. That's crazy. That team clearly was not on the same level as the Blue Jays. Clearly was not on the same level as the Dodgers. I mean, they barely sneaked by the Red Sox in the wild card series, and they got embarrassed. I mean, I don't think people remember that. The Yankees were embarrassed by the Blue Jays last year in the ALDS. I mean, didn't they put up 10 runs, was it, in the first inning? And then Will Warren got lit up in relief. I mean, they were throwing Vlad fastballs right down the middle, and he's hitting him 450 out to left. It's just ridiculous. I just don't get that. The lineup's gotten worse. All right, I'm sorry, the lineup's gotten worse because Paul Goldschmidt's not on the roster. Is that a huge move? No, it's not. But still, the lineup has gotten worse. They haven't brought in anybody. Paul DeYoung is their guy they're hanging their hat on. Is that even the right saying? I don't even know, but Um, Paul DeYoung, a minor guy signed to a minor league deal. And then, you bring in Ryan Weathers, and that's a nice move. That can help the rotation and stuff. But you lost two of your best bullpen pieces in Devin Williams and Luke Weaver and have done almost nothing, like nothing, to replace those guys. I mean, you took a guy in the Rule 5 draft. You claimed Caleb Ort, who you just DFA'd. Claimed Dom Hamill today, Rumble Ponies legend, if you know, you know. But, yeah, it's just, like, crazy. I mean, like, they keep making all these little moves. Yeah, like today, they claimed Dom Hamels and they DFA'd Javian Sandridge and Marco Luciano. And then if I scroll down a little bit more, you'll see more moves. They claimed Michael Ciani and DFA'd Caleb Ort. Then, they claimed Marco Luciano, who they just DFA'd today. It's like they're doing all this little stuff, but it's just like, I don't know. I don't know how you can like sell this product to fans. I mean, I'll say this: Yankees fans are some of the most spoiled fans in the world. I mean, 27 championships is unbelievable, but then there's also high standards with this team, and the Yankees have set that standard of they're going to spend money, right? They're going to spend money, and they're just not really doing that. I don't. I'm gonna do the same thing I did in the last episode, where I'm gonna pull up the Yankees, what it looks like currently for opening day. So the Fangraphs projected lineup on opening day, you have Trent Grisham, Aaron Judge, Cody Bellinger, Ben Rice, Giancarlo Stanton, Jazz Chisholm, Ryan McMahon, Jose Caballero, Austin Wells. There are zero changes to that lineup from last year. And I'm fine with that in a way because the Yankees did have one of the best offenses in the league last year. But you also can't forget every single guy on this team except Aaron Judge. Maybe you can make an argument for Cody Bellinger. Maybe. Disappeared in the playoffs last year. Disappeared. But you're just going to run that same lineup back this year and expect different results? I mean, they didn't bring in a catcher to compete with Wells. I mean, does Paul DeYoung really count? He's not even on the projected opening day roster. Like, does he really count as a guy that's going to compete with Caballero? Is Oswaldo Cabrera your addition because he was out all offseason? You know how much Brian Cashman loves to talk about that. Like, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, if Aaron Judge gets hurt, this is maybe an average lineup in the MLB. Like, I don't know. I don't know. And then you look at the rotation. Let me just get a quick swig of water. You have Fried, Schlittler, Warren, Weathers, Heel. And then obviously you're going to have Cole and Rodon coming back. So that's a strong rotation. Right? I'm happy with how the rotation looks, heading into the season. But this is where I worry right here is this bullpen. This is the projected bullpen as of right now. You've got David Bednar. He's a stud, clear closer. Camilo Doval, I like him. I think he'll be better this year. Obviously, great stuff. Fernando Cruz, I like him as well, but he can go through some, roller coaster moments. Tim Hill, love the guy, rubber arm, good lefty, whatever. And then you've got Jake Bird, Paul Blackburn, Ryan Yarbrough, and Cade Winquist. Like that just isn't good. I mean, so the ERAs from that's projections. I'm trying to find. Do they not have last year's stats? But I think you get my point. Like, Paul Blackburn had like a 6 ERA last year. Ryan Yarbrough I'm fine with him as a long man, but like Jake Bird was a guy that the Yankees traded for, gave up prospects for, and he came here and he was so bad that they sent him to the Rail Riders. And I'm okay giving him another opportunity, but Cade Winquist, Rule 5 guy, like they lost Devin Williams, who, as much as the numbers didn't look good last year and that kind of thing, he's talented, right? He's talented. If you put Devin Williams into back in the bullpen right now, there's not many. I dig Bednar over him, but you can argue Devin Williams over the rest of the guys that are in the bullpen. So maybe your second benefit of the doubt, third, best reliever is gone, and then Luke Weaver. He struggled to end the year, but again, you can make an argument for him to be over any of the guys that they have outside of David Bednar, and they've done nothing besides drafting Cade Winquest in the Rule 5 draft to improve the bullpen because Paul Blackburn and Ryan Yarbrough were guys that they re-signed, and then Jake Bird was already in the organization. So they have done really nothing at the major league level to improve this bullpen. And I said this early on in the offseason. I thought the bullpen was the biggest need. I understand the rotation with the injuries. And, I understand. I mean, they didn't even do anything with the lineup. I understand if you argue, maybe you want to bring in another catcher or righty first baseman or an out, whatever. This bullpen worries me. It really does. And I think we're going to get to the trade deadline again and say the bullpen is the biggest need for the Yankees. And the Yankees always stress, we don't like to pitch guys, 3 days in a row or, whatever. But, like, what are you going to do when you don't have Bednar available and maybe Tim Hill's out and, your starter gets, out in the third or the fourth inning? I mean, I guess you can go to Yarbrough or Blackburn, but, like, it's just, I don't know. I just I don't like it. I don't like the spot that the bullpen's in. I didn't expect to get this fired up about the Yankees, but, like, go get Michael Kopech. Just bring in somebody, like, somebody to a major league deal to come into this bullpen. And, the only true reliever lefty is Tim Hill. And, we've seen that come back to bite the Yankees, in past years. Think about the World Series. You have Tim Hill or Nestor Cortez. If they had a bona fide lefty reliever, that's who you go to in that spot. So, I don't know. Then obviously, you have Volpe who's hurt in the rotation, and you've got, Schmidt, Cole, Rodon. Will start the year on the IL. So, I don't know. The bullpen worries me, and I'd like for them to bring in some other arms. I know they're making little moves, and maybe Cade Winquest turns into, like what Clay Holmes was or whatever, but I don't think you can bank on that. You know what I mean? And it's tough to sell that to the fans. So there's my Yankees rant for the day. So we can now move on to the this week in history because there will be no gotta pull it back up. No studs and duds. So this week in history. So I have a couple, I think, actually, for the Giants this week. Let me see. I'll just go with this one. So on January 27th, 1991, the Giants won Super Bowl XXV. They defeated the Buffalo Bills 20-19, highlighted by Scott Norwood's infamous missed field goal. He actually gets a lot of hate for that, and he really shouldn't. That was honestly outside of his range for the time of that kick. I think it was something like he never made a kick that far on grass or something like that. I have to do more research into it, but it wasn't. People act like he missed a chip shot. It was like a 49-yarder, on one of the hashes, and it wasn't easy. But it was Bill Parcells' second Super Bowl win with the Giants and capped off a defensive masterpiece against the high-powered Bills offense. For the Yankees, on January 22nd, 2019, the Yankees signed DJ LeMahieu. Remember him? He's still on the books for this year. The Yankees signed DJ LeMahieu to a 2-year deal, a move that flew under the radar at the time, but turned into one of the best value signings in franchise history. LeMahieu would go on to win a batting title. He also finished third in MVP voting in 2020. I remember there were a bunch of Yankees fans at the time that were, like, upset by that move, and I was like, why? It's like a under the radar, low risk, high reward kind of move. So there is the This Week in History. And now looking forward. So the big thing to watch is Todd Monken with the Browns head coach search, whether or not he gets that job. And then see how quickly, he hopefully gets hired as the offensive coordinator. O-line coach, again, if they bring in Monken, keep a real eye on that offensive line coach because that is a huge part of the offense. And of course, I'll be breaking that down when it happens. And then for the Yankees, I mean, I kind of talked about it a lot already, but just they need to make more moves. I mean, it would just be tough. It's just tough to buy in when you're doing the exact same thing as last year. And it would be one thing if it was that they lost in the World Series, right? Like how they did in 24. You know what I mean? That would be one thing. But they lost in the ALDS, and it wasn't even really close. So we'll see. And the last kind of rant I'll have is it frustrates me so much when I see Yankees interested here, Yankees interested here, interested. So you're interested in everybody, but you're not like I'm interested in $1 million, right? Like that interests me, okay? So yeah, Yankees interested in Tarek Skubal, Freddie Peralta, Kyle Tucker, Bo Bichette, all these guys. They're interested, but like they don't get any of them. So it's I don't get it. I don't know. Maybe they can make another trade. Like I don't know. So yeah, it's gonna kind of conclude this episode. So yeah, next week's episode will probably be again either Tuesday or Wednesday. It's kind of how I'm doing the schedule um moving forward. So yeah, please like, follow, subscribe wherever you are watching or listening. Follow all the social medias, Instagram, TikTok, X, all that. And yeah, until next time, let's go Yankees and let's go Giants.